Okay, can you guys see me?
Yeah, I
I
can see your
can.
screen.
Awesome. Okay, so I guess from a tone perspective, this isn't a sales call. I'm not doing a sales presentation. We'll touch talk shop. We won't get into code, but we'll talk about how it is built. You know, what's the approach and the strategy behind it. We can talk a little bit about architecture. If we start getting into conversations that are almost sort of a confidential intellectual property type stuff, then I'll just excuse myself from it. But otherwise, we can just talk through it. The purpose is to share, you know, what we use Python and Flask for, and what you can do with it, and the approach we have taken in building this product as minimalistically as possible, so that we can do other things as part of product features that is not part of product itself. So how do you leverage, you know, cloud native capabilities so the things don't have to be done in Flask if it's not necessary to be done in Flask? Primarily because we can segment the product itself out quite a bit and break it up into 3 or 4 different components and let it be built in parallel with different skill sets, because there is an AI component to this that an AI team can work on, and all of that stuff gets done separately. So, you know, we can talk through that. I'll give a brief introduction on what MARCIE is. So MARCIE is basically a human sounding name, but it stands for an acronym called M.AR.C.I.E, which is multidimensional array configuration inferred expression. It's our core engine. It's our core data structure on which the AI is built to read books and recommend. So if you think about Pandora and how Pandora recommends music based on, you know, kind of the content style, like there's about 450 parameters that they use. Well, ours is similar model. We have up to 1 billion plus data points that we use to develop patterns or to identify patterns on how the books are similar or different. And the reason we do that is that the whole point of MARCIE is to help writers promote themselves in their books and simplify all aspects of creativity. That's not something that they really do or really good at. There's a lot of process work involved in bringing an idea to market, and there is a lot that is required to be done technically to help the writers work with their stakeholders to make sure that all the right things are done. And writers by nature, you know, unless you are writing a technical book and you are an engineer, you know, most writers are not technical, and so they have to put up with a lot of different things that they aren't really good at. They don't like it, and self-promotions and selling doesn't come easy to them either. They don't care about that either. I'm sure there are some who are really good, they like it, but most writers, you know, would rather just focus on doing what they really love, which is to write books, write their, you know, whatever the narrative is that they're framing. That's what they want to spend time on, not try to, you know, do blanket promotions.
Much
My
like
wife's a
how
writer.
most developers aren't in sales.
Yeah, something similar to that, right? So my wife's a writer. I've been supporting her career for a while. I've seen the joys and the frustrations of that over the years, and I know how hard it is for writers when they are asked to say, well, you go to your promotions and you talk about your book and yourself, and make sure you talk about it all the time, because the more people know about you, the more they are likely to buy your books. They don't have time, energy, or willingness to want to do that. That's not what they got. That's not why they got into writing. They wanted to write good books, good stories, get in front of readers, get read, get appreciated by them. And so we built this thing with the intention of simplifying all aspects of their work that doesn't involve, you know, the pure joy of writing, because that is something they can do on tool of their choice. They can use Word, they can use Google Docs, they can use Apple's Pages or any other writing medium. Doesn't really matter what they use to write books on or whatever it is that they're writing. But there is a lot that goes around it that we wanted to help them with. So Marcie foundationally right now has 3 components. One is the core AI engine, reads books, reads other books, knows how books are similar or different. That leads then Marcie to recommend books to a curated set of readers. So now you can reach to the right readers who are more likely to want to read the books because they are kind of similar and they like those books. Then there is this MARCIE.app, which is an actual web app that they use for managing the process of creativity. And the third component is, which is not, you will not see it here, is the promotional engine that promotes them. And the analytics behind it allows us to monitor the performance of the promotion and then constantly tune the promotion. So the promotions never end. And so the tagline we use is, Marcie enables a book to sell forever, sell itself forever. And forever, we take it seriously. Like there is no end to this because you aren't really paying for a one-time promotion. It's a SaaS-based marketplace. So once you get onboarded, your goals are clear and you're willing to pay for it, as long as you keep feeding the meter, you can park the car as long as you want, that's kind of stuff. So the platform does it for you. That way you never have to deal with promotions, rejections, analysis. The whole point is to get the writers maximum coverage, which then hopefully leads to better awareness about their products and their works and better purchasing decisions. So you won't see that in here, but that's the foundational aspect of this as well. And so what we ended up doing is, if you think about the writers, most writers, they don't want to constantly worry about different apps and get blogs and configure them and put new themes in it and all of that stuff that is just extremely time consuming technically. So we wanted to build highly convenient way of capturing the process of creativity, and creativity strikes anywhere. There are times when you think of a paragraph or a sentence or a rough draft of something, a log line around a book about what you want to write. You take a picture of a bunch of book covers that you would love to discuss with your publisher on how, why you love the things about them and what you can do for your own books. So there's so much around creativity that today just happens all over the place. There isn't a good way of managing that, an easy way of managing it. So we wanted to give our users a highly simplistic world, highly intuitive world of using the capabilities. So what we ended up doing is we ended up building the web app behind a messaging infrastructure. So if you think about an iPhone or an Android phone, they all come with a messaging app. It's just basic stuff that they deliver. Well, we didn't write any mobile apps. We didn't write any native apps, none of that. What we did is that we said, you can send us what you need to send us. Like instead of writing it in an app, we'll give you a number to text to, and the text messaging itself behind the scene has an engine. And that then allows you to connect your thoughts and your ideas and all of that stuff to your own private content library. And that private content library is important because not everything that you think of or is a draft or is a concept is going to come to the market. You don't want to constantly share things that are half-baked, but you need a way to manage it. And so we wanted to give them a way to keep things extremely private and yet have the capability to share it if they wanted to share it. And we wanted, because all of this happens over and over again, over days, over hours, over weeks, you can imagine we could build up thousands of content points or content pieces over a year. And so we wanted to give them a capability of having something that self-organizes itself. So you don't have to constantly worry about putting things in folders and whatnot, because when you have to deal with thousands of pieces of content, it's a lot of work.
What's an example of something that, so it sounds like you assign a phone number to a user, correct?
Yeah.
So what's an example, and the user is who would be submitting to that phone number, correct?
Mm-hmm.
What's an example of something that they would send to that phone number?
Yeah, I'll show you. So the reason I was giving you that overview is that it's important to keep in mind text messaging is one of the most simplistic, intuitive way of using a mobile device. And so we wanted to use that because it minimizes the adoption issues that come with having an app that the user has to learn and download and deal with security and all of that stuff. We didn't want to do
I really like that idea. Yeah.
Yeah. And so we built the entire machinery behind a simple text messaging. And so this app that you see here is, this landing page is highly simplistic. And what we love about this is this message around here is New York Times ran an article on why Amazon's bookstore isn't really serving the needs of the writers anymore. And for that matter, readers too. And nobody, like if I were to go and talk about this, people won't pay attention to me. I'm a nobody. But if New York Times writes about it, yes, it carries weight. And there is a great deal of information behind this article. So I recommend people to go to the site and get to that article and understand why things are not working anymore. And then there is a little bit more about how we enable the book to sell of itself forever. It's backed by powerful analytics. It's in a loop. So the loop never ends. We don't never stop analyzing. We always work on your promotions and get you maximum coverage. That way you never have to worry about going and making cold calls, if you will. So once they land here and they have decided that they are already signed up, there's a waitlisting component. We won't go into that here. But so they come in here and we have designed this very verb oriented. So if you see things in here, it's I want to read, review, get promoted. I want to log. So we focus on this because we want to help our users be highly action oriented in smallest chunks possible so they can keep moving forward. It shouldn't overwhelm them, right? The process of creativity is highly messy. And we want them to work on it as it comes to them in the smallest chunks possible until the whole thing comes together. And so we try to maintain a highly narrative and action oriented form and language structure on our app here. So say they are logged in at this point, they don't know yet whom we are working with. But what we have here, what you see here, is we work with Auth0. Okay, so Auth0 manages our login infrastructure. They have the database where all the users are. We don't care what the passwords are and how it's managed. It's more secure than what I could have done on my own. And we want to give that peace of mind that we don't really need any of this. So we just need to know that you logged in successfully. That's all. And we would rather work with a public company. So Okta and Auth0 are now same company. And we would rather work with a company that has an amazing infrastructure in place that we can scale with without taking on the headache of managing privacy and security and any of that stuff. So I come in here and either you can, you have your own email ID password, or you would have logged in with Google. We haven't turned on anything else yet. We wanted to focus on Google. Sorry about the dogs. So I'm just going to log in using Google. And I'm going to log in as a user that has signed up. So now I'm in a post-login space here. Our post-login space right now is highly simplistic. And what the user sees is our purpose. Why does Marcie exist, okay? And what do we plan to do to live up to our purpose so we can help the writers? Over time, we expect this to be very different than what it is right now. But you can see that the messaging, the entire image is around messaging because we are reinforcing the aspect of usability, which is send us a message. If we get it successfully, the only thing you get back from us is message received. That's it. If you don't see message received, then there is a problem. Let us know. But otherwise, this is all it is. So say I've logged in here at this point. I've done my part. Now the menu changes completely. So I want to go review my creatives, and creatives is every single creative idea that I have. It's a sort of a collection of that. I want to go work on my creatives. I want to see what all is out there, how it is organized. What do I need to look at? Sometimes I forget, like, what was that thing that I took a picture of that is important for me? Because everything happens at incredible speed. So I go to my review creatives, and now you're going to see a content library. This is a self-organizing content library because you can see that I have taken notes about things and I have provided pictures. Now, this is a picture of something that I attended, was a startup business model where they talk about different things. And I loved it. A year old, and I somehow found it. I had misplaced it and I didn't want to lose it again. So I texted it to myself along with this note that this was from a year ago, done it. Now, because there is an AI component behind this, it says, oh, this has a date component to your message. If you're ever looking for anything that has date component, it self-organizes. Oh, sorry, it just broke. All right, we're going to go back and I'm going to fix this, but let me go back. So this is a problem with live demo. Sometimes you don't know what's going to blow up.
All good.
But I'll fix it. So there is an AI component. I'll show you what that is. Then we also have tagged, we're trying to connect our ideas to when we eat. Food culture is extremely important, and different people have creative ideas around different times. And some people are night owls, some people are super early. So over time, we plan to build tagging around food culture. Early morning people will most likely see things around early morning. Late night people will see things, around nightcap. You may see that. So this is another example. For example, I found a clip on an article. I didn't want to lose that, so I took a picture and I copied the clip, the text from that news article, and I said this thing is from this source. All of this was a text message. Okay, now I have this in my content library. If I ever want to go and say what happened to that company that got acquired because they're trying to do similar things as me, then I have access to that content right here. It refers, this content refers to an organization. There's a reference to a person. So over time, if I want to see all my content, hopefully this works. Nope. Okay. My tagging is broken. I'll go fix it. So if I ever want to see everything that was around organization, then it will go find all the content that were filed under organization. If there's stuff in here that is just made up, like it's not an English word, it's just made up, then you can click on all the stuff that was kind of made up stuff and it'll give you all the content that's made up stuff. And so right now, this is my private content library where I like to keep things. It is my action items that I want to do. And so you can keep dumping things in here. Initially, it will bring you back, when you log in, it'll bring you back to 14 days. That's it. We limit it to 14 days because we're trying to implement a sprint-like structure that says, focus on 2 weeks. To the extent that you can keep moving forward in 2 weeks, that's great. However, if you ever want to go and find more, all you have to do is go find your content and it will go and find more contents within the 90 days. So now it changed from 14 days to past 90 days. And then all the contents are things that I created. I texted myself over 90 days. And it could be anything that I have done. So this piece allows me to keep track of it. Now, say I want to share this. And this is, because it's private, we don't have ads in here. We don't have publicly visible anything. It has to be post login because you could be working on anything half-baked. But say you want to share this with someone. So you say, I want to email it. And it opens a simple email form with what I'm sending, who I'm sending to, and then what is it that I want to say about it? Now it brought my text over, but I can edit it. I can put anything else in it. I hit send, it'll go to that person and they will get a copy. So they know what they sent, whom they sent it. And now if I were a writer and I was talking to, let me go back here. So say I'm a writer and I want to talk to my publisher about like the hottest, book covers. And I find that older ones had sort of beige, the newer ones are more, they pop a lot, like, deep colors. And I was like, hey, I want to be cataloged around not old style, but new style. So I put it in here. I send them an email. It's like, can we talk about this during next time? And now they get to see things that I'm curious about. And all of this happens because I have access to my own content. I don't have to, send them separate emails and any of that stuff. Now you could, but then everything happens outside the orchestration layer that this creatives allows you to have. Otherwise, you will have to track all your emails independently and any of that stuff. This allows you to basically keep track of all your content and where things are and look it up as you need to, or look for your tags. These are all auto tags based on AI. And so you can find your content from whenever. At some point, we want to turn this into the food culture tag, so that if it's like, what was that thing that I talked to Josh about during lunch? Just find all my stuff for lunch. And then I don't have to worry about it because it was done during lunch hours. So we try to take away as much hard work from our users as possible by allowing them to just focus on basics. Can you take a picture? Can you text? If so, you're good to go. And if you see, there is no search bar in here. We don't want to make things as texty as possible. So like this, reset to default, sure, you can reset to default. If you want to look for everything that's by Monday, it will bring you all content that were created on Mondays. If I want to do it for January, I'll do that for January. For year 2022, this is everything I have for year 2022. Okay. And if I want to reset to default, then I'll reset to default. I'll go back to past 14 days. And this is everything from today for last 14 days. So without making it any harder, we want to give our users this ability to have content in place, self-organized with an embedded search, so that I don't have to worry about it. I just click on it. Like you click on any web page that takes you to another web page. Well, we have created this construct where anything that's worth linking, even within yourself, you should just never have to like look for it. You just click on context. January is a context, Saturday is a context, and you can find it. Now, behind the scene, it basically, does get queries and finds content. We use Mongo database because it's highly extensible and we can add features. The text messaging comes in. We work with Twilio, and so we have numbers from Twilio. We send out messages through SendGrid. It's the same company, Twilio and SendGrid now. Our login is done through Auth, which was acquired by Okta. And if I were to, let me show you. So, and we are pretty clear about what we do with your information and who we work with and who we not work with. We have Google Analytics that allows us to learn who's logging in, where are they coming from, what's their technology, what part of the world they are from. We learn a little bit about it kind of stuff because it helps us build better products. So I will, at this point.
You had said that you leverage cloud functionality to help support your workflows outside of the Flask implementation. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So when I texted things, it actually got delivered to Twilio. Then Twilio makes a call to a webhook. That webhook is a serverless function in Google. Then we read the content because we are getting the text message. So Twilio sends us the entire content of text message. Then we analyze it and see what's going on in there. And we actually construct a payload. That payload then goes into this creative that you saw. So all of that is happening outside of this MARCIE.app. Yeah. So all of this never came in through the app. It all came through a simple text message. Now, things that we want to build over time, we are in the process of currently building this, is file sharing capabilities, file uploads, collaborating using files and whatnot, and that kind of stuff. We'll keep building things without making it more complicated than it needs to be, because we don't want our users actually to spend any more time on this than they need to, right? We don't make money when they spend time on this. We make money when they say, hey, what you built really works for me. It allows me to do what I need to do. Thank you. And they're willing to pay us for that convenience. That's when we make money. So there is no ads here. We don't want them to spend any more time. Spend the time you need to spend, get your job done, get off. So that's why. Sorry, go ahead.
Do you plan on enabling other pipelines than text messaging? Like I feel like email would probably be a good pipeline to like send an email to your account to do the same operation that you're showing here with text messaging? Like,
Yeah.
there's a lot of, especially like when you're on a phone, you want to, you're looking at an article, or even on your laptop, there's the share this thing, and sharing it is especially on when you're on the desktop, sharing it to as a text message isn't really a thing, but sharing it to email, that's a thing.
Yeah. Yes. So we have thought about that. Initially, we did not enable it. It's very easy to enable it, but we did not enable it because our focus was on making sure that they were thinking in as small a chunk as possible, and they were always on their mobile devices first, not so much on the desktop. What we found when our writers are on desktop, they are more in this research mode, writing mode. They are attending their meetups and things like that. And so we prioritize the use of SMS as a feature that was more important than sending things through email. Now, one thing I did not talk about, and I should, is when I email this email can be any email address. And a lot of authors don't know this. Writers don't know this, that if they have their own blog, most blogging platforms, you can update their blogs by sending content to their own personal email address that the blog sets up. And so if you want to publish a blog through email without getting on the blog site itself, you can do that. Well, most people don't know that. What this allows us to do is, if you have something interesting to send to your own blog, after you created this content library, now this content library has a lot of things, but if you wanted to share this, say I want to share this on my blog, then I'll say, hey, this thing, Open Road Media got acquired. Sounds amazing. They have a lot of different partners, and they're going to bring in a lot of focus. Whatever I want to say, I want to do that. I will put in my email address for my blog. The whole thing goes and becomes a blog post for me. So now I don't have to worry about making different posts all over the place. We will also want to add, sharing things on social media. Now they like to have public sort of, unauthenticated content, public content, so they can actually share. And we will be building features that allow us to then make each content here, each entry, selectively a public entry. That way, if it becomes public entry, then you can tweet about it, you can put it on Facebook, whatever you want to do, doesn't really matter. But only that particular thing is public. Everything else is private. So by default, everything is private, and we give our users the convenience they need. So they don't have to worry about, for the same content can be shared many, many different ways to whom they need to share it with. Not everything that they think of is really something that they want to share. They just want to focus on things that they need to work on. So this allows them to keep working on their ideas over time. As they write their books, they get in touch with publishers. They have things that they want to focus on. They'll collaborate using this platform as well. And once they get published, they let us know that they're ready to get promoted. Then we have a process for that where we ask them to upload their book. We get the book, we feed it to our AI actually reads it. And then because AI has memory of other books it has read, now AI is able to say, this book is, and it has many different dimensionals. That's the aspect of the name, multidimensional. So it says this book is similar to this book on this, in this area. And it goes many, many layers deep. And that's how it knows how these books are similar or different. And so we scan about up to 1 billion plus data points to know the pattern. So we get pretty close to knowing how the books are similar or different. And how this helps us is that if you're interested in reading a specific, style of book, you don't want to get hammered by everything else that's around it. Just there's way too much noise. When you want to read something, you want to read something. We would rather give readers what they're looking for and then get off, because this is something we help our writers. So we want the writers to be able to put their book in front of the readers when they're looking for that kind of book. And over time, if the reader's taste change, then that's fine. We will have other books on it, and then we will allow those writers to get in front of these readers. So we're trying to facilitate a relationship more than a commerce sort of model, because we don't sell books. We just help them with discovery. We help them with promoting authors. and their content, their works, and creating workflow, all handled by AI behind the scene in as less technical way as possible. And so we didn't build it on an app. That's why we went the messaging route, because anybody can message.
Thank you. I don't think that you're set up for it right at the moment, but do you think that there could be a presentation on kind of like the foundations of setting up an AI pipeline, like talking about like, I'm not interested in your secret sauce, obviously.
Yeah.
But how to do kind of a contrived experiment or a contrived example for how someone, like if they have their own idea, would be able to leverage the tools that you have leveraged to do their own thing.
Yeah.
How could someone use these tools? And like, I think that would be a really interesting presentation for to kind of expand on and build on what you've been presenting here. I think this is a really interesting collection of tools that you've used in a really novel way. But I really think that there's a lot of opportunity here for us to kind of dig a little bit deeper into what it means, what these tools mean, what it means to work with these different tools that you've used to build this.
Yeah, I'm sure we can figure something out. So let me just talk briefly about it though. So this tagging that you see, so this runs on App Engine, by the way. I didn't mention this before. So my entire infrastructure runs on Google Cloud. So I have serverless functions, I have serverless apps, I use schedulers, things like that you would typically use in a serverless function or serverless manner. So the AI that runs off of another serverless component. And AI processes things and then turns it into actual data. The app doesn't know anything about this, what's going on here. The app is pretty dumb, right? So the fact that it got tagged to say this post itself is about a date called January 26th, the app doesn't know anything about it. The only thing the app knows is that this post was tagged with an item called date. That's it. But that content, whether it's a date or something else like you see further down here, hey, you talked about an organization, you have URL in your thing. So if you want to find all your content based on URLs, it knows that there is URL in here, and it will tag it. Now, some of this can be done using regex. You don't need AI for it, but we can go very, very deep into this stuff that regex won't allow us to, right? There's a lot of content that can be analyzed using AI that regex can't. So all of that happens behind the scene. It's not even on the App Engine itself. So the pipeline of content and the facilitation of the content that comes in, like the App Engine is the receiver of all the stuff that happens before it. And now I can go to MARCIE.app and find all my contents that I've sent over time using my phone. But if I were to track all of this, now I would end up with a photo app on my iPhone that has all the photos that I would tag. That way I can find all my photos when I need to. Then I would have all the text messages that I sent to somebody to talk about stuff. And that would be in my messages app, which sometimes maybe I'll find it easy, maybe I won't. And depending on my setting, I may not even keep all the messages. So that's gone. That this allows, this will not let you forget that because it's already there. So we had to think through systematically, what is a day in a life of a writer look like? And where is all the stuff that they deal with? And how can we bring everything together in a manner that feels highly simplistic and intuitive? We don't even want to train our users on how to use our app. That's why we wrapped it around a text messaging capability. Over time, yeah, could we chat back with them? Sure. But that's sort of the least of the problem right now. So it's important to think in terms of, when you build something like this, what problem are you trying to solve? For whom are you trying to solve this problem? And what is their level of expertise to based on which you will give them your solution. And we opted to give them as simplistic as possible. So we don't even have, like, you will notice here, you can't even make it, configure it to make it to your taste, because other blogging platforms allow you to do that too. And most authors don't even want to put in their HTML and JavaScript stuff in there to make their blog look different. They just don't want to work on anything technical because there is a whole lot going on in their lives. And last thing they want to do is to worry about knowing HTML, CSS, JavaScript. That's not who they are. So you have to understand all of the things that happens in a writer's life and where they are, and then build a product that allows them to just use it as simply as possible and then get off. So we architected for frequent use, but minimal use. Like, you don't need to hang out here for 2 hours. We don't make money just because you hang out here for 2 hours. So you have to think about that, because if you say, well, can you talk about AI? I could, but what is AI trying to do? This is a highly shallow version of AI that tags content, reads content. The very deep aspect of AI that I have actually reads the entire book. And it has machine learning components to it. It has natural language processing components to it. And we had to have algorithms stacked on top of each other to create this entire AI. So if you can think about that, you have to be able to say, well, what problem will this AI solve? And it is as simple as, like, it will read the book and it will tell me how this book is similar to other books. So if somebody's looking for one book, then they are in that universe of books that are similar, and they may like that book. That's as simplistic as it gets.
So there's a question in the chat from Jeff talking about the book formats.
Yeah, it's we ask for text format. We don't take Kindle like Mobi. We don't take HTML. PDF also not. We basically ask them for text. Sometimes we do get like doc, like a Word doc or a Google doc or something, and then we have to manually sort of turn it into a text. We don't want to take anything that is programmatic. We just want to take simple text file. So if you can save your content as a text file and upload it, you're good to go.
So yeah, my thought around kind of an example is kind of taking all those different pieces that you talked about, like the natural language and the AI. It's more like how they play together, and like what a more sophisticated thing, something that you couldn't do just with regular expressions. What would kind of a comprehensive yet contrived simple example look like for someone who is kind of having trouble putting all the pieces together, visualizing all the pieces and how it all fits together?
Yeah, I mean, that's a pretty broad topic.
Oh, absolutely. That's why you always have to come at it with, okay, here's a contrived example that I'm going to be solving. So say you have a you want to load the blog posts, blog posts, and have a find out which ones are like similar. So like based on content that so that would be part of it. That would be probably more of just kind of a lexical comparison. Yeah. But I don't really know what a good question would be to ask for AI to need to come, or machine learning to come into the picture. Yeah. So from your perspective, what would a basic question that would cross that threshold into machine learning, what question would you need to ask? What type of question would you need to ask?
That's a really good question. So the way to think about, AI in general, whether you're writing your own algorithms, you're using a service, it is data first, right? So what you have in front of you is data. And there's so much data that you're trying to find some level of, some probability in it, some pattern in it. And you really can't account for all of that using your if else then logic, which is highly simplistic in many ways, right? So if you go by code first, you write the code first, and then based on the constraints of the code, you get the data that you get the data. With AI, it's backwards. You start with data, you end up with probability, some sort of a prediction, and then you write code around it to operationalize that prediction and help the user solve the problem. So if you are dealing with a scenario that is highly simplistic in relative terms, that you can get away by coding for many different scenarios, and that's it. You don't need an AI for it, right? Because the AI itself is highly it's its own discipline. You have to worry about the entire data life cycle and making sure that the data is even ready for AI. And then depending on what you're doing, if you are doing machine learning, there are a lot of different type of machine learning algorithms you have to use. So you have to know what problem you're trying to solve, then use the right machine learning algorithms for that, tune the model, make sure that it is doing what it's doing, and then use that model as a way to say, once I'm done with this model, here's the prediction I get. Now what am I going to do with the prediction? So you have to still consume the prediction somehow, whether it's within the system itself or provide it to a user. In my case, we consume the prediction that these books are similar. It's a prediction, right? It analyzed it, and based on some very high probability score, it says these books are pretty similar. And then we present it to as a recommendation, and that's how it gets consumed by the readers. Now, the readers, honestly, they don't know how this came into being. They don't. I don't know that they care. I could have an army of researchers who do nothing but read books and say this book is like this and this book is different than this, and they wouldn't care. As long as they have access to high quality books that they would love to read when they want to read, that's what they care for, right? So you have to be able to say, can you solve this problem manually? If so, try it, see if you can solve the problem. But then the question is, what is the sustainability of that? Can you really sustain an army of researchers whose job is to do nothing but read books and catalog it, and at a very content level recommend books? Because it becomes very, very unsustainable very quickly if you try to maintain an army of book researchers. So then the question is, well, could AI do it? Answer is yes. If a human can read a book, AI can read a book. So we built that solution to read a book like a human would, right? So you have to think through that entire process before you say you even want to do AI. There's nothing fancy about AI by itself. It's a bunch of, mathematically oriented algorithms that work on a lot of data. That's all it is.
And so would an example of something that AI on a kind of a particular task level, so I would imagine that an algorithm could be thought of as a collection of smaller tasks, yes?
Sure.
Would a kind of discrete task be understanding the type of content of a paragraph or a sentence?
Sure.
So it's like kind of sentiment, but like I'm just trying to think through what it would like, how to identify those types of more gray area questions to ask, to know that you're going to need to go in more of an AI direction.
Yeah, so
or that AI would even be valuable.
AI, right? The question is, why AI?
Right.
Like, why do you even need AI?
Right.
Most things you don't need AI. This app doesn't need AI. The only reason I ended up even using the AI component is that I don't want my writers to worry about where all their thousands of pieces of contents are. I want my AI to do that for them. Because if it is a self-organizing private content library, then they just need to focus on what type of content they're looking for, and it's all there. It's automatically indexed, cataloged. And that's why I use the AI, because there was no other way to do this.
Yeah, you also have I don't know whether it be AI or machine learning for the continual promotion and like how to push out the advertisements, who to push the advertisements out to, and like even probably when to push the advertisements out. Would that be an AI problem or a ML problem?
So let's think about our terms a little bit differently. So AI is
Okay.
a very, very broad universe of sort of data-oriented algorithms, okay? It's basically artificial intelligence. Natural language processing is part of AI. Machine learning is part of AI. Deep learning is part of AI.
Okay.
If you have heard within machine learning, you'll hear like supervised learning, unsupervised learning, reinforcement learning. Like there is a lot of different aspects of what is it that you want to learn about, right? The learning term can throw people off, but essentially you want to learn something about the data. That's all you're doing. You're training the model to say, when you see this data, this is what you know it is. And so if it's a supervised learning problem, and then you give it a bunch of pictures to say, is this a lion or a parrot? Well, it won't know that initially. You have to tell it, read this picture. This is a picture of lion. Or analyze this picture. This is a picture of a parrot. And you give them tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of pictures. And then over time, based on the labels that you've given, whether it's a parrot or a lion, it's going to know that when you see these type of patterns in an image, it's a pattern of a lion. It's not a parrot. Okay, but you taught it by saying, this is the content and this is what the content is about. And then you say, okay, now that you're done building, I'm going to give you another picture. What is it? And then it'll say, I think the high probability this is a lion, if you give it a lion. Okay.
Yep.
Because it says, I know enough about it statistically to say, when I see this pattern, high probability it's a pattern of a lion. That's all it is. But you have to supervise the learning process.
Yep.
Unsupervised is very different. There is no labeling involved. It's just like, here's the data. Tell me what I need to know. A different type of problems, clustering problems and all kinds of stuff. So you have to know which problem you're trying to solve. Usually you will see, like if you have heard about regression analysis, have you heard about that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Regression analysis, people do regression analysis on a spreadsheet. That's not AI, that's not machine learning. It's kind of same thing, like you give it data and then it gives you the weight. So it tells you on a 80-degree day, you are more likely to sell mango ice cream than, the vanilla ice cream, whatever. It knows that based on data and it gives the weight. So it knows mango, 80 degrees has a higher weight for mango. It's similar concept. So if you don't understand the data, and if you don't understand the problem you're trying to solve, AI by itself is not going to do anything for you. Right? Yep. So you need background in data analysis. You need background in math and statistics and things like that to be able to even say, okay, what am I trying to figure out from this data? All right, there are a couple of questions. I'll talk about it. I don't know if people can see it in recording. Regarding the site. So no, there is no JS. I mean, there is a little bit of JS, but it's mostly Flask, Jinja 2 templates, and a lot of custom CSS stuff, my own branding and things like that. Usually, honestly, it's a pain in the ass. Just everything has to be so finely tuned to make it look just right. It's very, very time consuming. But you got to do what you got to do. I mean, this is UI doesn't become sexy overnight, right? You have to spend a lot of time on it, and you have to do it in a manner that's going to keep it highly performant. So you can't really build stuff that just churns forever. So, but it works if you keep it simple enough. It'll work. It'll do things. Second question was, is it full time or something you work on free time? So I do have a full-time job. I'm a VP of engineering at another software company. It's a SaaS company called One Door. We build products for the retail space, for merchandising. But I've been working on this since July. It almost feels like a full-time thing because I promised my wife. It all started with this promise. I was like, well, you know, if Iron Man can have Jarvis, you should have your own AI that does all the stuff that you don't want to do. Like, you should focus on writing. Let your AI do stuff for you. Before you know it, we were building Marcie. And then one thing led to another. And now we have, you know, we have 7 authors and 17 books on the platform, different type of book, you know, authors, different goals, different things that we try to help them. So, you know, to the extent that if we are trying to live our purpose, then it's success. If we don't live our purpose and it doesn't help the authors, then we are not doing all the right things. So that's what allows us to keep working on things when I'm not at my full-time job. So I do write code early in the morning on weekends, or, you know, it's like a holiday or something. But, you know, it's one thing to write code. Honestly, it's other to actually build something that people can use, that you can actually help them. And there's a
100%.
surprising amount of non-technical work involved in that. I would say, yes, a lot of the stuff that I've done over the years, it's crazy amount of work. I poured in over 4,000 hours. At least if I had a sort of a normal VC-backed team in place, I would have spent at least $1.4 million, $1.5 million just building the basic V1 of these 3 things. Okay. Now maybe I could have gone faster. In my case, I just used the skills I had to build what I needed to build, because I didn't have the clock ticking that says you are running out of money. So I invested my own money. I invested my own sort of time. Most importantly, I was trying to solve a problem that I know is real. And so that kept me focused. And so I do what I can do when I can do. And that's why you will see that this thing runs on beta. And even in our terms, we say there is no service levels here. Like, you know, if you're depending on this, we appreciate that. But if something breaks and if I can't respond, you know, within 2 hours, I can't respond within 2 hours. It'll have to wait. Like, it is a beta service. Nothing like this exists anywhere. You know, for a platform to promote your book and make your book sell itself forever doesn't happen. Has not happened yet in a 500-year-old publishing industry. Right. So this is that magic that we tell our writers. This is what we are building for you. And this stuff is extremely tricky. And so the writers that we work with are at the very early front end of the early adoption. It's similar to any population, right? Some people are early adopters. Some people will when they're ready, but they're not early adopters. So most of the writers that we work with right now are all highly tuned towards early adoption, and generally writers are incredibly smart. But that doesn't mean they want to experiment with all the technology. So some people who are kind of open to this will take it. Some people who's like, nah, we'll wait until you get to write critical mass, then they will join us when we're ready.
So why did you choose Google Cloud? Was there a technical reason there?
Yeah, good question. Thanks, Jeff. I didn't want to put it on AWS because I wasn't sure what kind of conflict of interest I'll end up creating by having this kind of stuff on AWS. And I'm actually even, you know, I have now, it's, you know, 2 years old, but I had certification in being a cloud architect on AWS. So it wasn't a technical thing. I could have built this on AWS.
Yeah. Okay.
But it was mostly around that. And then I wasn't sure where to go with Azure yet. And Google seemed like Google has done a lot of work in research on text and AI and their infrastructure. And so I saw myself growing with capabilities a lot more using what Google has than what AWS or Azure has, because Google has matured so much around search and catalog and indexing and their entire AI around understanding what the heck is going on in the content, that if I ever got to a point where I actually needed to use Google's AI engine, at least I trusted it that it had, you know, it was doing really well. Now I'm not using Google's AI. I'm using something else.
Yeah. That your secret sauce.
Yeah.
Nice. No, yeah, it's a really fascinating project that you got.
Yeah, I mean, you know, what I have found is that if I stay grounded to the purpose of what I'm trying to
Yep.
do, then even when things aren't going as well, you kind of figure out how to fix it.
Yeah,
you know?
no, that's almost always the key.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
find that when you have a clear goal, then things just kind of come together. When you know where you're supposed to be headed.
Yeah.
It's when you don't that you flail.
Yeah.
Spin your wheels.
Yeah, or even if you know what you're trying to do, but the motive is like, I have a certain amount of money, and then I need to go raise additional money, and then I need to manage a level of equity. Like, you get all of that is important. Don't get me wrong, but sometimes it can distract you from what you're trying to do, and then sometimes that the means to an end are lost. Like the means itself becomes an end. You don't really care what happens in the end, and that's when bad things happen.
Yep.
Yeah, you have to be able to grind it out when you need to. And that only happens when you are committed to your own sort of problem you're trying to solve, and you feel strongly, you believe in it.
So, is there anything more that you could say about the infrastructure that you have, like in terms of how the information is delivered to the authors, or like what the authors do with the information, or is that not really built out yet?
Yeah, I can talk a little bit about it. Should I stop sharing the screen? Like, there isn't a whole lot more. Okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
So yeah, I can talk about it. So we, as I said, we try to keep our interfaces highly simplistic and intuitive. So all communications are sort of text and email based, including any kind of analytics that we deliver. If we can deliver it through email, we want to deliver it through email. Okay. Because that is something that is easy. You know what to do when you get an email. If we make you, go all over the place and write queries and pull data and slice and dice, yeah, kind of cool, but it's really not helping you solve the problem. Like, the biggest problem is they don't have time or expertise to do technical stuff. So give things as simply as possible. So our interfaces are primarily what you saw, an email and text message. That's it. So that's how we deliver things to them, and that's how we take things from them. Which is why, like, I'm a firm believer the UI is actually dead. UX, not so much, right? UX will always be important, because you want to be able to maintain a highly engaging experience for our users. So UX will always remain at the forefront, but UI by itself, like a traditional UI that you are used to seeing, very wordy, very texty, lots of fields, it's dead. If you can do things without it, you should absolutely do things without it.
I agree.
Yeah. So we try to keep things as simple as possible that way. I'm sure one of these days we'll end up building something that almost requires them to maybe click 2 extra things before they get to the information. Most of the things that you will have noticed, what I showed you guys, is one click, right? If you're on the page and you want to find something, click on it. Like, don't try to click multiple times before you end up, because it's just frustrating to click so many times. You don't need it. So everything is driven based on how minimal work can they actually do and get to what they want to achieve. So that drives everything. So if we can cut out a single click, we'll cut it out. If it changes the way we approach a problem, we'll change the problem. Like, we'll change the solution to solve the problem. So we're very, very focused on how little can we ask our users to do and have a hugely impactful experience of being working with Marcie.
So do you have a basic promotion engine in place? Do you have authors using your service, testing out your service yet?
Yeah. Yeah, as I said, I have 7 authors, 17 books.
Okay. How long have you been exercising the system?
We have been building our entire platform in phases and chunks. We have been at it since last May, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
So there are different, I mean, there are things that we started off and we kind of retired. We're not doing it anymore. Like we learned from it, and it's like it wasn't really solving. It wasn't allowing us to do what we need to do for our writers, so we stopped doing it. It's a learning journey. You do something, you ask them, you try to understand the problems, you build a solution that'll work, and sometimes it doesn't, and then you let it go.
Yeah, that's a big part of kind of being data centric. You got you follow the data.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, this has been great.
Well, I'm glad it was helpful. Thanks for the opportunity, and I know it was kind of last minute, but
I appreciate it. It's nice to break away from the norm and talk about stuff with a group of smart people.
Yeah, I mean, my I guess, my hope is that if there is one message just from a technical community perspective, is that we don't have to live by just one sort of construct or set of thinking around what is the right way to do it, number one. Number two, if something works for you, use it. It doesn't work, don't use it. You don't have to, just because somebody said that's how they have done amazing projects, that you should follow that route, or just because a book says that's how you do it, that you should do it that way. You don't need to. Right? Most of the heavy lifting doesn't even get done within Python and Flask. It gets done on the Google platform, and that also runs on Python, but it's not a Flask-based construct, right? So it's not a site. It's just a lot of backend jobs, basically. And
so,
I could have written those as view, routes and things like that. I didn't want
to. For your backend machine learning AI pieces, is there Google services that you've leveraged, or are they just like containers with code on them that you have written?
Yep, the latter.
The latter.
I did not use Google services yet.
Okay.
At some point, I would imagine that we'll find a service that we would like to use. Right now, we're still trying to prove out the concept that your entire core product, the central thesis of the core product is that it's driven by intelligence, and we want to be able to build that out without depending on any one sort of provider. And so we can really tap into any one provider per se.
Gotcha. Cool. Well, I think we're gonna call it a night there.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay.
I appreciate you stepping up.
Yep, no problem. Have a good night, guys.
Thank you very much.
Yep, no problem.
Very good.